Welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine, and I'm the president. I'll be your host today. We're going to get right into our speaker, Laura Conover. She was elected the Pima County Attorney in 2020. She's the third woman to hold the office, the second defense attorney, and the first victims' rights attorney. And reform, transparency, and accountability are all Laura's key priorities. She proposes to eliminate the use of cash bail. She wants to see an end to all use of capital punishment. She plans to divert cases of substance use and disorder and mental illness into treatment as opposed to the jail. She wants to protect people with vulnerable immigration statuses, and she has fortified the office with a new fraud and consumer protection unit to safeguard against unethical and exploitive behaviors. And with that, the floor is yours. Go right ahead.
Well, wonderful, Larry. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for having me here today. The first update, I would say most certainly, is that we have what's called the Homicide panel every single Monday. It used to be a monthly panel that would meet. It's the most senior attorneys in the office. It's the bureau chiefs. It's the chief of our detectives unit, to go over all the pending homicides. But we do it now every single Monday, and I'll be running back to continue that. We do it every Monday because when we walked in the door exactly a year ago, we had 144 homicides pending going back to 2017. We picked up another 93 from the city of Tucson, and a dozen more from the rest of the county. So over 100 more came in during the year. And so we do it. So every Monday in the morning, we prepare all of the reports. We review all the reports. And then in the afternoon, we have 3 or 4 presentations to see if a case can be resolved or if it needs to go to trial. And those are our Mondays. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to take us through an annual report that we produced. So that there is our beautiful, beautiful mid-century modern building downtown. And we produced this annual report. We just printed a few copies for all of our county administration and those that we report to in that way. And then we've tried to push it out. It's available on our website. This is a little bit of the numbers that we started talking about just a moment ago. What I'd like to do is just highlight a few things. We talked about kind of the bad news just a moment ago about the homicide numbers. And this is a nationwide problem. It's historic numbers across the country. It started in March of 2020. We can all make some obvious guesses about that. Traditionally and historically, my office can only be reactive, right? Cases are brought to us and then we prosecute them. That leaves us frustrated. What we've done as much as we possibly can all year is we have done as much prevention work and work out in neighborhoods as we possibly can. So at the bottom right there, you're going to see that we handed out 6,022 gun locks during 2021. This was a big deal coming into the office. We are a paper office. We are not paperless. Our case management system relies exclusively on paper. That became quite the challenge in COVID. We were only in office for 5 days. We made it to Saturday morning when a COVID outbreak last year, this was pre-vaccine, was so bad. We had so many people so sick that we were literally concerned about operational functionality. And we had to close the building for the building. And it was the first time in the building's history that it had ever been closed. My mission to take the office paperless took on a whole new story, where we literally had sort of an I Love Lucy factory, if you can picture that, of people, a few select people in the building carrying out boxes, and all the attorneys would line up on the street every single night at 5, and they would bring back their box of files that they worked on that day, and then they would get the new box for the next day. So we are thrilled that just last week, our new case management system did a site visit from St. Louis, and we are well underway to becoming paperless. We also saw the first pay increase agency-wide since 1997. 1997 was the last agency-wide salary increase. You can imagine how low those salaries were. I'm telling you that these people in the office are saints and angels, so dedicated to civil service, but really, really amazing to raise their salaries to something much more reasonable. And luckily, just in time. It's allowed me to bring back a number of very talented, highly skilled, highly experienced veteran prosecutors, and to plug them right into the homicide unit, the domestic violence unit, the special victims unit, just at the right time. We also completely overhauled the county attorney's website, and I would love for you to check it out today or tomorrow, some other time soon. This is my favorite page. I'm not allowed to have a favorite page, not allowed to have a favorite unit. I don't, but so I'll just call this my favorite page, page 5, what I would call real demands from Pima County. A real rallying cry that we heard all year long in 2020 during the campaign, and very clear promises that were made. And so I'm very pleased to report that the Capital Homicide Panel has been disbanded. We no longer even have the infrastructure to charge death penalty cases because you have to go all in. It has to be real. It can't be the worst of the worst, because everything is the worst of the worst. There's no homicide that I enjoyed reviewing last year. And so if you believe that the death penalty is dangerous and a terrible, terrible waste of taxpayer money, it's extraordinary, then you have to go all in and you have to shut the unit down. And we've already seen the results in real time. Our appeals unit is able to work on the cases of the day and to work with our trial attorneys to produce the best product we possibly can on every case, instead of working on cases that occurred 30, 40 years ago. The other thing is treating children as children. That was another huge mandate. If you are 15 years of age and you are alleged to have committed a number of very, very serious crimes, I don't have discretion. The legislature has passed laws that send those kids straight downtown. I can't do hardly anything about those cases, but what I can do is I can try to keep every other child in the juvenile system working with juvenile experts and receiving juvenile services where they should be. And so that graph, it speaks for itself. Tons of new training. Certainly a favorite moments in the last year was hiring. There was a round of hiring in February, and then there was another round in the summer. And I just can't tell you enough what it feels like to the honor to be in the room and to represent the county attorney's office with so many shockingly bright, talented, multilingual, award-winning students who want to start their legal career here at the office. And so it was kind of a bonanza in hiring, and 38% of the new hires were bilingual. We didn't have any Spanish-speaking prosecutors when I was elected, not one. And that's alarming because we serve, obviously, a bilingual community. So 38% of our new hires speak Spanish, and then a whole bunch of other languages too, which is wonderful. And so a lot of training for these new hires, and it's continuing on again. It's already almost February, and we're about to do another round. I'm told we usually get 4 to 6 applicants out of what's called the Sonoran Desert Career Fair, but we have 45 applications for law clerk and 17 for attorney. So we've had to add several days of interviews. Larry mentioned the fraud unit. That was another delightful thing to watch. Fraud attracts certain minds. It's so different from prosecuting violent crime. These prosecutors and investigators and staff get boxes and boxes and boxes of historical paperwork, and they've got to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to look for the patterns. Follow the money is sort of an easy phrase to use, but it's hard work, and it's really, really, really important for our community, especially our elder community. It's so I'm very, very proud of the unit. They've got, well, as of December, 50 active cases, and they're about to hit the 1 million mark already in restitution for fraud victims. And we also did, well over a dozen fraud presentations. We do them all over assisted living facilities, neighborhood associations, especially that focus on the elder community, and getting out as much fraud prevention as we can. Our civil division, so remembering, that we're not a district attorney's office. I'm not a DA, I'm a county attorney. So we've been talking so far about the huge criminal division. We talked about the juvenile division out at the juvenile court. And then we have Southern Arizona's also largest law firm has a massive civil unit. And their work has just been extraordinarily important all year, all over COVID, regulations in the schools, assisting employers countywide on how to deal with COVID, tons of employment law, and our health law unit in particular, on top of COVID, on top of all that, you can imagine a huge spike in the mental health referrals. That's a very, very special unit inside civil. This details a lot more of what civil does. There's a tort unit that represents the county. You can also imagine that the elections law unit also has been hard at work. Last month, we sent out the results of a year-long triple layer investigation into 155 ballots. Those ballots were not counted. They were flagged as being potentially secondary ballots. Then of those 155, there was a number of them, I think in the 40s, that were identified for further investigation. And it took my entire detectives unit, it took personal interviews to demonstrate that there was no fraudulent intent whatsoever. It was a lot of people who had voted by mail and then weren't certain, couldn't get confirmation that their ballot had been received. And so we were delightfully pleased to announce that there was no fraud in the Pima County election for 2020. Oh, another amazing unit in the office. I call it the crown jewel. And I met Kathy earlier before we started, and so she knows exactly what I mean by the crown jewel, the Victim Services Division. They are so extraordinarily important. They respond on scene at crime scenes to assist victims in real time. I've seen it in real time. I did a summer of ride-alongs, and I would see how quickly our army of crisis responders get to crime scenes so fast to provide immediate comfort. And then they track the cases through the courts. And those are bears that are in the back seat of every one of the cars in case children are involved. And that top left, that's our Virginia Rodriguez, another sort of wonderful steal, reverse steal. She was a victim advocate years ago in the Pima County Attorney's Office, and then she went on to the Attorney General's and started supervising. And then so I was able to bring her in as our new head, our new director of victim services. I mentioned the bears. The courthouse dogs provide very real comfort to anyone needing to make a statement or testify in court. It's very stressful, very, very, very stressful. In November, I actually got to watch it live in action while a little sister of someone who had lost someone needed to read her letter and her mother's letter. And Arrow, which is the brown the Brown Lab, Arrow, was with us, and I saw how it actually works. I mentioned earlier we try to be out every Saturday out in the community. It keeps me informed. It keeps us involved. It keeps us connected. It wasn't easy, of course, again in COVID, and so that sort of gave birth to the community cleanup that we do on many Saturdays in the spring and winter. Patrick Robles is our community outreach coordinator. He's amazing. I'm sure many of you know him. And he arranges it all and just tells me like to wake up on a Saturday morning, and he just tells me where to go and where to show up. For example, this Saturday morning, we'll be at Roberts Naylor, partnering with that elementary school and the Broadway and 22nd and Craycroft, 29th and Craycroft. Good grief. I'm just moving block by block here. 29th and Craycroft. And those neighborhoods where we do beautification and we do cleanups, and we also delicately and sensitively bring law enforcement and neighborhood together, non-uniformed, doing fun things like picking up trash with grabbers and listening to music and getting people to meet people. And that top picture was an example of that. I think that was 12th and Ajo. This was a core values project that we launched just as soon as we arrived. It took a long time because we had the entire agency invest in it, what our mission is and what we stand for and what our service is to the community. And again, this is on the website so that you guys can all look through it. And that's it. We're on, the office is on Facebook, where you can see my weekly review every Friday afternoon. Last week was week 56. And I do the week in review, a week in justice in Pima County, every Friday afternoon, and it gets posted on Facebook. I'm also active on Twitter, which is kind of just the criminal justice updates. And that's it. I should stop sharing, and we should do questions with you fine people.
So let's get started right away. Stephen Mizell has a question. Go ahead, Stephen, unmute yourself.
My question is, what, if anything, is being done in terms of the community justice boards?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. If anyone here is not familiar, the community justice boards are just an extraordinary service. It's another huge army of volunteers, and they work with kids who have been referred from juvenile court into the justice boards. And it is a form of restorative justice for children. It's a huge, Mr. Mizell, it's been a huge point of frustration. COVID, they attempted to continue during COVID and switching it to virtual. But if you all know the concept of restorative justice and the sort of the healing that goes on in a circle, it's like a therapeutic circle. You're literally in a circle together and taking accountability. There's a magic there that really cannot happen virtually. And not what's more than that, the referrals totally dried up because kids weren't in school. And so we, Mr. Mizell, we tried, we had a goal of launching 2 weeks into January, trying to see where COVID would be. And of course, it's not at all, that was last fall. It was before Omicron. So it's COVID. So we're hoping maybe mid-semester that like spring break could give us the next launch point. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
If I could follow up, does that mean then without referrals that kids that the probation officers would have referred to the justice board are not being are recommended to the boards?
No, yeah.
They're winding up in the criminal justice system?
No, I should have said referrals to juvie went way down because a huge source of referrals are the schools, neighbors, coaches, these kinds of things. And kids were home. So yeah, generally speaking, referrals down.
We have a question from Andrea Kennedy. Andrea, go right ahead.
I once told somebody on a phone, I guess it was a phone scammer pretending to be from the IRS, that there was a special place in hell for him. But I heard you mention that it was different to prosecute fraud, and it sounds like it has more paperwork. How else is it different?
What our goal was with the fraud unit was to sort of be a net that covered the rest of the county. So in other words, big things like the IRS, big nationwide scams, the feds are going to try to go after those. The Attorney General's office goes after high dollar, like big mortgage type scams. And we wanted to be a place where even low dollar scams and frauds could be looked at, because $300 can be make or break in a month for a family. It's a big deal to them. So that was the idea in establishing our unit. We also launched the Southern Arizona Anti-Fraud Task Force, which brings together 30 detectives, investigators, prosecutors from all those agencies I just mentioned, all the jurisdictions locally, because then they share the patterns monthly, and that really helps us track the patterns, which can get us into a prevention method too. But the more prevention we can do is the ultimate goal in fraud and scam.
And we have a question from Lillian Fox. Lillian, go right ahead.
I haven't seen good publicity about your office. There was an awful newspaper article that made it sound like everybody was resigning from your office. And what you've presented today is wonderful. You've made a tremendous number of really important improvements, and I can see why some people would leave because they didn't want to come into the 21st century. What are you going to do besides this report to try to keep the public better informed about the really major good changes you're making?
The relationship with the Arizona Daily Star was a little tricky going into it, I guess. For anyone who observed the endorsement debate, and I didn't get their endorsement. We have a great relationship with them, but they make their publishing choices. And I think that they've been doing a great job recently of I think getting more into the actual policy work that we're doing and getting away from what was actually just a really small number of veteran prosecutors who at that point in their career didn't want to make a huge change. I didn't fire a single prosecutor coming in. Most DAs do. They come in and they clean house. I didn't want to do that. I wanted a 6-month observation period. That may have been, in hindsight, a poor choice. And so they left on their own, but it was administratively exhausting. But now it's allowed just this amazing, wonderful opportunity to rehire people who want to be in the office for all the right reasons. Who started their career in the office and then moved on to the Attorney General's office or Pinal County or Maricopa County and are coming back and for all the right reasons.
All right, we have a question from John Yoakum, one of our members. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I would first of all like to acknowledge I have been paying attention, and yes, I do believe you're doing an excellent, outstanding job as Pima County Attorney, changing a mindset that's been there for a generation. But my question, we recently heard from Sheriff Nanos, and tell us more about the no bond, no bail program.
That's been another huge source of frustration this past year, John, and I appreciate the question. And it's it's sort of a key topic for me, as everyone knows. So I'll work backwards and I'll say that we have drafted a bill because it's going to ultimately require a legislative fix. Arizona is tied to a cash system. It is a cash bail system, and cash fails us on both ends of the spectrum. It allows someone who is presenting as a clear threat of ongoing harm to pay a high cash bond and just walk right back out into our community. And then it traps people by the hundreds. It traps them on low cash bail, on nonviolent, victimless offenses. So it's failing us on both ends. So I've got a bill. It's where I have another huge stakeholder meeting with the legislator tomorrow. We're working on it. It's not going to be an easy process, but in the meantime, I had 3 trainings, office-wide trainings last year, and I've got one coming up again to start the new year on making sure that wherever we possibly can, we are arguing to the court, to the judges who make the final decision, when we think someone has to be held because they're presenting as an ongoing threat of harm. And then we're simply not asking for cash bail. We're asking for conditions of release on anyone who should not be in there. And it's just a constant drumbeat. It's not a hospital. It's not a treatment facility. It's a jail. It's unhealthy and it's unsafe. No matter how hard our sheriff works, jails are jails, right? He's doing everything he possibly can, which is why he agrees with, we agree firmly on this, that we have got to do what we can to get people out of there who shouldn't be there in the first place.
Our board member, Christina Early, has a question for you. Go ahead, Christina.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for being here. Great information. I'm checking out your website now. When it comes to the homeless and the unhoused in our community, I live in the city. We have a unhoused camp that has developed across the street from us on some property that's owned by a trust. So nobody takes care of it. And so I called the city, my ward, and they told us that they can't do anything about people living out in the open, that they can't do anything about the unhoused. But yet they're causing an issue in my community, in my neighborhood. And I know this is city, but what is the county doing to help the unhoused and so that we can all live together? Thank you.
I really appreciate that question. It's heartbreaking, especially this time of year. I can tell you that we are part of a collaborative, my office, that works with stakeholders across the county. It's defenders, judges, law enforcement, and then all the services that you can think of. The Jail Population Review Committee looks to release people, but with an eye towards transportation and housing. So we're constantly aware of what's going on there and what the problem is. It's substance use disorder and it's mental illness. I mean, those are the 2 huge things fueling the homelessness population and the unhoused crisis that we're seeing. I had a 2-hour meeting with new Chief Kazmar to welcome him in. He just hit his first 30 days, and it was probably one of the main topics we talked about. We know that we cannot jail our way or charge our way out of this problem, but at the same time, public safety is critical. So all of our policies are looking at how to make sure everything we're doing is data-driven and keeping the communities and the neighborhoods safe. I mentioned that we'll be at Roberts Naylor this weekend. I think it's next weekend we're going to be at Peter Howell, which it was a huge combined effort because there was a truck alleged to have been involved in quite the fentanyl distribution at 5th and Alvernon. The truck was seized and removed, but it had attracted, you know exactly, Christina, what it attracted, right? So now we're going to go in with the 1-2 punch, and we're going to go in and partner with Peter Howell Elementary and clean up the area. And it does so much more than you would think it does. So Christina, will you contact Patrick at the office, Patrick Robles, and tell him what area you're talking about so we can put you on our community cleanup list?
Mike Bryan, who's got some online questions. Mike, go right ahead.
One is just a follow-up. Did your cash bail reform bill get hoppered this year, and what is the bill number if so?
We have a critical meeting tomorrow with a possible sponsor. So I'm kind of on the eve of a really big move there. So I can we'll certainly be reporting back if we move forward on it and we've got a number. We'll be singing that to the world.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the second part is, I know a lot of progressive prosecutors have undertaken the practice and the vow to take all police shootings in front of a grand jury to let the community decide what their standards for charging police for unlawful use of force might be. Do you have any such program in mind for your office? And secondly, is there an update on the recent police-involved shooting at Lowe's with the gentleman in the scooter?
So I want to make really clear about there's two sets of ethical obligations here. One is that I cannot and will not ever comment on a pending case, because in so doing, especially as the elected official, I would be and could be improperly swaying the future jury that, and I need to make sure I'm never doing that, which is very hard because it makes me have to stay silent on the questions that sometimes that matter most. What I can say generally is that to bring a case in an officer-involved shooting is an extraordinary, comprehensive, detailed effort. The last time, apparently, Pima County tried a case, the event occurred late 1989, 1990. And that was the last time an officer was charged in a shooting. And so not only are those people who were involved in that case not in my office, they're actually none of them are alive anymore. And so what we have been doing in the interim, just as a matter of practice, is benefiting from statewide expertise where these cases have been charged. In Maricopa, for example, there are people who have served in government for decades who are well-versed and experts in this, who lend support. And it's such a gift. I must jump back. My lunch break ceases in moments. As I said earlier, and I'm glad this is recorded, I'm on my home computer. The lunch break will end, then I will resume my work time. Although when am I ever not working? My first inclination on November 29 or 30th, I think it was to pick up the phone to Graham Woods. And I couldn't do that because he had just passed. And it was really hard because that's who I would have picked up the phone to. And I had just talked to him 2 days before he passed. But through Grant, he had introduced me to just extraordinary luminaries in the Phoenix area. Who lend support, and it's just phenomenal, and it's such a gift to Pima County. And as soon as everything's over, I'll explain more. You all have been tremendously wonderful to be with. I miss being with you in person. I hope next time it will be in person. Please keep doing what you're doing. We need your service out to the community. I will jump back. You guys be well. Stay well. Stay safe.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Laura. We appreciate you cutting out a little bit of time from your busy day to speak with us. Let me call this meeting to a close. I want to thank everybody for coming today.